Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lost Sheep Podcast. I'm Nazario Pengal here with
Cole Bissett.
and
Evan Aber.
welcome back, folks. I did that a little bit early. I unmuted the mic a little bit earlier right there. I tried to time it up. Didn't quite work, but this is episode number 51. First time back on StreamYard since Christmas break, so about around 15 episodes ago that we've been on here. And fellas, how are we feeling about this summer going forward with the podcast and just enjoying the summer back home?
Evan?
I don't know, but yeah, I'm feeling really good. Love being set up. I feel like I'm in like a personal studio here with the camera going and the mic.
I like your setup too. You got the nice bed
know,
all
I
cleaned
feel
up,
like-
the shoes. I mean,
I feel like the backdrop really is nice, but it's just a green screen. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I feel like the backdrop really sets it up nice and professional, like I'm on a Zoom call or something. But I'm feeling great. Obviously, graduated a couple days ago, so that's really cool and fantastic. Super excited to start the next kind of chapter, but super hyped to be back home and just taking in some rest and relaxation before getting back to school. So,
what about you,
Yeah.
Cole Bissett?
It's been going pretty good. Just started farming again, so back up with that whole business. Other than that, just exciting to see people that I haven't gotten to get to see, but like we went last night and played some sports with some of my homeschool buddies back home, and it was awesome. Got to play some disc golf, played a couple rounds. I am back negative again, Evan. I have shot negative the last 2 rounds, so it's exciting. But yeah,
We'll say it's been raining very heavily here. I haven't gotten out. Our the one close course that's like within like 15 minutes of us is right next to a lake, and I'm pretty sure it's flooded right now. So
dang. Well,
gotta
that
do my
sucks.
research on where else to go.
What about you, Nazario?
I've been back for over a week now. You guys have only been back for a couple days, but I've been having a blast back home, being with the family, out on the farm. This morning, I got up and I just went out on the porch and was just looking at the farmland, and it was a super cool moment. And last night, just like listening to, sound like my mom, listening to just the crickets and the frogs, and it was a really cool experience because, at the cottages, we really don't exactly have that. Well, I mean, we kind of do, but I've never done it, so.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can't imagine watching the nature at the cottages.
I'm convinced we need to install some sort of canopy on our back porch and set up a table and some chairs back there. What do you think?
I mean, I'm down. Maybe we could do a little podcast action from there one time.
Good.
Change
That'd be
up our
kinda nice.
setup one day.
Yeah. Go to
Yeah,
nature,
from
that'd be
the
exciting.
cottages, live from the cottages. We can do a SEC game day live from the cottages edition.
By the way, I listened back to last week's episode, and I think our background was really. I think it was really like I think we had a peak episode last week. I was really excited with it. The audio is great. The whole quality was great. The visuals were great. I really enjoyed listening to it. So
Yeah.
kudos to us for that.
Hopefully we can figure it out with StreamYard. So, ladies and gentlemen, bear with us as we figure out this formatting, as we're trying to adjust to it as well. But we're going to dive into our first summer quote, episode number 51, our summer quote. This is from Cole Bissett brought this quote. It is from an artist named Gavin, and the quote is, "You got to burn through the brush to make room for the trees." I'll read it one more time. You got to burn through the brush to make room for the trees. And Cole Bissett, you're the farmer. You're on your tractor going through the brush a lot. I know you have dealt with that a lot. So would you like to, kick us off with this quote and tell us a little bit about, where you got this quote from?
So just a little bit background on who Gavin is. He is he's an artist. He's kind of part of the folk genre that's been going around a lot recently, and he's got a lot of really big songs. He's got a song called "Open Arms, Alleluia," which I think is a lot about his conversion story. He's not particularly a Christian artist, but he has had a lot of struggles in his life, and he uses his music as an outlet to kind of get over them and get through them. and that song went viral and it was huge. But this is actually from a new song that he hasn't even released yet. This is just a teaser of some of the lyrics, and when I listened to the teaser, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really, really good. Like you got to burn through the brush to make room for the trees. I was like that just hits really, really clearly. And so I decided, okay, we have to have this on the podcast. And so I sent it in to you guys, and it sounded like y'all were pretty receptive towards it. And so it made me start to think, like, what does this mean, like, in my life? How do I burn through the brush to make room through the trees? And I think it comes back to the word striving. I don't know if y'all have heard of Sarah Swafford, but that is her big, what's the right word? That's her big motto. Striving. Mantra, yeah.
Yeah.
It's striving for excellence, striving for purity, striving to be with God, striving for all of these things, because it's consistency in your striving that makes the journey so wonderful. And so I think that's where my brain first goes with this, is consistent striving to rid yourself of that brush in your life that's keeping you away for the trees that are growing. But yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, cool. I agree with a lot of that. I think it's cool. I really like this quote. My family jokes that, like when I was younger, I was very, like for working out and stuff, I was very personal trainer like, and I didn't really have like, if somebody's slacking during a workout or something like that, I'm going to tell them and I'm going to say, hey, you need to kick it up a notch. And so I think this whole, you've heard of like Marines saying, you have to tear down to build up or whatever. And that's kind of the mentality I take with a lot of things in life, because, this quote's talking a lot about clearing out that underbrush, but also maybe clearing out some of that stuff that you've learned, some of that stuff that you've grown into and whatnot. And I think that's very important for life. Just, we can talk about bad habits or vices or et cetera, that you pick up along the way as you live your life. And there are some times where you just need to look back. And for Lent, this was really cool. I know, we kind of have this reset with Lent, but you need to look back and be reflective and really look at, am I being accurate with my life? Am I being true to what I want to live my life? Nazario, first thoughts before we shoot?
Yeah. So when I think about the imagery of the quote with brush and with trees, my mind kind of instantly goes to like really big, tall trees that you think of normally, and then, kind of like an underbrush, as you say, not very big. But I think it's interesting to think about that can be different for everyone. The imagery and the style or way of our lives might not always be super tall trees, small brush. Sometimes it could be like there's tiny trees, but the brush is bigger than the trees. And what that means is that's a lot more hard work to get the brush out if the trees haven't even grown yet. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of my first thoughts. Like, it doesn't matter, or it doesn't mean that the trees are automatically going to be bigger than the brush. And do you guys hear the bird back there?
Is that a
I
bird?
forgot
Okay,
you
I was like,
it
the
is a
first time
bird.
I was like, dude, Nazario's little brother is going crazy. And
Okay,
then
I put the dogs away. I didn't think that the mic would pick up the bird, but I guess it did. So sorry about that if that
What
happens.
bird is
but
it, by the way? Is it a parrot?
I think
it's a conure.
screechy.
It's a conure.
A what? A
So-
what?
A conure. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, conure birds, they want to go up in the trees, but there might not be big trees all the time. It could just be a bigger brush, smaller trees. So that's kind of what I think of at the beginning of the quote. Just there's different types of forest that we could be going into to try to work on these things. We all have our own type of forest.
I think
Yeah.
another misconception with tearing the brush down, and this is gonna kind of be out of left field.
Let's
which
go,
is
Farmer
so
Cole. Farmer
normal.
Cole, come on.
Well, it's so normal for me to throw y'all off with something, but Martin Luther King Jr. said this. He said, "Isn't it kind of silly to think that tearing someone else down builds you up?" And so I think a lot of the time people view other people as brush in their lives, and they think, okay, in order to get to the trees, I need to tear this person down so much that it's going to build me up, that way I can actually get through the brush and get through the trees. And that is just not the case. If you have to tear someone else down to build yourself up, I think that's more of a self what is it? Is it self-loathing? Would that be the right word? Am I wrong about that? No.
Yeah,
Hold on, Cole. Hold on, Cole.
that sounds right.
Uh-oh.
I think no.
Nazar's looking up the
I like
definition.
that a
Hold
lot,
on,
and
hold on, hold on, hold on,
I'll
hold
let
on, hold on, hold
Nazario
on.
launch
Let
into
me
what self-loathing is. Yep.
let
Yep.
me get
Define.
a definition
Who is
from
it?
someone other than Cole.
Jamie. Jamie.
Is that me?
Nazario's gonna Jamie
Jamie.
today.
Are you Jamie?
The definition of loathing is a feeling of intense dislike or disgust. So self-loathing would be a feeling of intense dislike or disgust towards the self. Is that what you're going for, Cole?
Yes, because
Yeah.
if
So I
it,
feel like
like
that
it
would
that
be fair.
dislike toward yourself, you're putting it on
Yeah.
other people in order to build yourself
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Like I think it's I think it's very interesting because I agree with you. It's like talking about bullying or general mean-tempered behavior, right? And I 100% agree with you. A lot of people kind of seek that as a way to build up the ego or build up the spirit, right? I'm better than you. I have done more than you or whatever. I need to tear you down so that I can make myself feel better. And I like that a lot. I think that's important. I also think it's important to have an ego check once in
You
a
like
while.
bullying a lot, Evan?
No. I like not bullying. Well, you know, let's be so clear. Bullying is good for the American economy. Um,
Oh, is
but
it?
you also, I mean, y'all can speak to this a lot, right? Because I'm in egomaniac. But sometimes you need an ego check, right? You need a. Nazario's looking that up right now. You need
I'm not. Sorry, just trying to figure out the setup. Sorry.
you, you need kind of that check and say like, hey, I'm not the best person in the world. I'm not the greatest. At the same time, we've talked about like friendships, the three types of friendships: friendships of utility, friendships of virtue, and friendships of pleasure. And so, while not tearing people down per se, sometimes there are relationships, there are friendships that you need to, and this goes back to my original point, you need to re examine to really see, hey, is this friendship leading me on? And if it's not, if it's a friendship that's leading into the wrong things, down the wrong paths, whatever, then that becomes something that you need to, yeah, like burn away. You need to brush away or prune. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure we talked about, and maybe this was, we do a prune and ads. Oh my gosh, did we come up with a triple P for today?
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Okay. I must have missed that. But we talk about pruning a lot. Like prune and add. We do that for Lent, which, if you're unfamiliar with, is just this theory that, as you take something away from your life during Lent, you should add something to replace that time. And that's not like, I'm going to prune chocolate and I'm going to add becoming a brother. It's equivalent stuff. But anyway, pruning those types of relationships, pruning those types of things from your life, not tearing those people down, but taking those things away is needed sometimes pretty heavily.
Cole, I hope this question gives me the answer that I want. But when you're going to try to figure out what is brush, what is trees, like what do you need to cut down? What do you not need to cut down? Is it hard to tell what is brush and what is not brush? Like, is it hard to figure out, oh, I need to cut this down, I don't need to cut this down?
I think it's
Well,
very.
one's a tree.
What?
Okay, we're just let him answer. Let him answer.
Okay, all right.
I think it's very related to each person because I think sometimes people are not knowledgeable of what the brush actually is in their lives and
Are you
don't.
okay? You're on metaphorical right now.
Oh, am I supposed to be like?
I think he was asking. Are you
I
asking?
was
physical,
I was
Nazariah?
going literal, and then I was gonna make it metaphorical. But
Oh.
Cole, you go, bro. You go.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm just saying is, I think sometimes people often get confused and like can confuse brush with trees in their life metaphorically because sometimes, like again, we've talked about the distortions of the world and how easily goodness can be distorted into evil and how it can be what's the word? It can be
Twisted.
very easy to confuse the two because they seem so similar and because they make you feel good one way or another, you know. And so I think going back to that, it's very related to each person. I think somebody who's aware of what true right and wrong is able to at least determine most of the brushes in their life. I think it's hard for us to fully understand the brush that's in our life to the fullest extent. But I think for somebody who's educated on morality, maybe it's easier to figure that out.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. So I think this is where, obviously, Evan, you talked about friendships, and I just have this imagery of forest. Forest can kind of cross over, right? Like we can have our lives cross over. It doesn't just happen on our own. It's not just isolated. Cole it thinks this bird is just so funny. Sorry about that, Cole.
It's killing me.
But there can be crossover, and that's when we think about sometimes we need our friends to tell us what we need to prune and maybe let us know, hey, there is a thorn in your eye. Is that the word? Is it how Jesus termed it? I'm trying to think of what he said.
Splinter.
Thank you. A splinter in your eye when you can't even notice it because you just see the splinter in somebody else's eye. And so that imagery of seeing the forest cross over and needing the help of other people to notice things that we need to cut down, or maybe I need my farmer Cole to come in with his tractor and knock the brush out for me in my own forest. Maybe I can't even do that. Maybe I don't have the equipment to do such a thing, but Cole does. Cole knows how to work on that and how to fix that. And obviously, the virtuous friendships are very much needed for that, and that's another part of that quote that I like.
Yeah, good counsel is super important. I'll also say, yeah, like you mentioned, hey, sometimes the farmer needs to come in and knock that stuff loose, right? Do his job with the big machinery. And I think that's that precipice between, I like that word on this mic, precipice. That's like the delineation between, when can we prune activities from our life and when do we need to go and see, confession and go and prune the sin from our life, because they're different things, right? Like when we talk about pruning, we're talking about changing habits and cleaning up our life, whether it be something like sexual sin or a bad habit like, hey, I am biting my nails, which obviously isn't a sin, but it's just on my mind right now. But like, I'm biting my nails, like those things can be pruned from our lives. But that remaining sin from something like sexual sin or addiction or whatever you're dealing with, that you need to cut out of your life, then you need to bring in the heavy machinery over here. And really, that's confession, that's the Eucharist, that's prayer, that's the big stuff. And I think the kind of the delineation there, right, is who's doing the counsel. Like, we can have tiny farmers who help us with clearing the brush away, right? You can pull up weeds in your gardens, things like that haven't taken really full root, haven't taken seed yet. But in order to get those things, the pine trees with the tap roots way down deep, you need to bring in that farmer with his, backhoe and his chainsaw, and he's going to have to pull that thing way out. And it's going to leave a big scar on the ground. It's going to be nasty looking. But at the end of the day, it's going to be removed. It's not coming back. So, that delineation between when do we need just somebody to counsel us, when do we need that help, and when do we actually need, to go and seek the counsel of confession, seek the counsel of someone who knows a little bit better than we do.
I know we talked last week about the moral law a good bit, but I think we need another reminder of it. We can see another reminder of it here, is that how do we know if it's brush, if it's not brush, from just our human perspective? How do we know that this isn't just a tree that's going to grow into a tree or into something good or a habit? And it's why we need the moral lens of our faith to be able to... Ooh, Cole pulled up a quote. Oh, was that for you, Cole?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
My bad.
Cole was experimenting. And this is why we need the lens of the Lord, that to be able to see, okay, this is brush. Because if not, how are we supposed to know? And it goes back again to what we talked about last week. Like, we have this moral code and this moral compass from God, and it's how we determine whether it's brush or whether it's a tree. And that's why we need him, because if not, then how are we going to be able to figure that out on our own? Because we don't know. And he's the only one that knows what we need and what we truly want, because obviously he created us. So he gives us that perfect lens. Well, obviously we aren't perfect, but he's trying to give us his perfect lens to be able to see what is brush, what do we need to prune and remove. And it goes back always towards following the will of God and becoming like Christ. And that is what we always should strive for when we're trying to figure out and deliberate, is this something we should be doing? Is this something good or bad? And it's the three things, like, are we following the will of God? Does this glorify God? And is this helping me to become like Christ?
And I also think,
Well,
yeah,
go for
no,
it.
go ahead, Cole. Shoot
I was
for
gonna
it.
say, I think the cool thing, just when I think about confession and the brush, when I think about confession and we're confessing our sins and we're getting washed away, when I think about brush, it kind of reminds me of like a flamethrower just going through and just absolutely burning down everything. And so I don't know, but like just in my head, that's what I feel like is happening when I go to confession. Is there's somebody in there with the flamethrower just burning down every bit of brush. And I kind of wanted to, I don't know, are you going to touch on the current way that we're going about this quote? Because I was going
Yes.
to, okay, if you're going to touch on it, go ahead, because
Yeah.
I have one
No,
more thing separately that I would like to bring up in a second.
all I was going to say, in staying on this kind of moral, natural law plateau that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now, is this kind of thing of like, when they tell people to go out and clear brush or whatever, or like even when you're gardening with your parents, like when I was younger and I was gardening with my mom and I was pulling weeds or whatever, the weeds are growing in with the plants, and really, when you're younger, you don't know what is what. And so your mom kind of gives you like a general guideline. And maybe in the forest, this might be like, okay, out in the forest, go rip up anything over 6 feet or under 6 feet tall, right? And like we'll consider that brush. So just leave the big trees. And it's kind of like that. Adding that moral law, adding that natural law, that Catholic perspective, that Christian perspective helps you to refine what you're looking for when you clear away the brush. Okay, so like we're trying not to kill the tiny trees now. So let's clear away everything that's under 6 feet, but also has, only 4 leaves or something, right? Leave all those plants with 3 leaves per branch or something like that, right? Something silly. But, you get better. And that's kind of that refining of the process as we go down. So that's what I was thinking about as you were saying that. That natural law is kind of that, refining of what to clear away and what needs to stay.
Yeah.
Cole, you want to show the video?
Nazario has a video of a flamethrower that he's pretty adamant about. Here you go.
Boom, baby. Cole got his burning brush. There we
Yeah.
go. That's his imagery right there.
Yeah, when I think of confession, that's what Jesus is doing to my soul. Now I want to take this quote one other direction, because I think it's important to highlight this. I think a lot of time people ask the question, like, why is this suffering allowed to happen in my life? And suffering's very often confused, I think, and brought towards more of the negative direction, because it's got this negative connotation towards it. But I actually think there's a really great part of suffering that allows us to grow as disciples. So this is the quote I pulled up, and I will read it to you guys. If you're on visuals, you can see it right there. If God causes you to suffer much, it is a sign that he has great designs for you and that he certainly intends to make you a saint. I'm going to repeat it one more time. If God causes you to suffer much, it is a sign that he has great designs for you and that he certainly intends to make you a saint. So I think consistently throughout our lives, we're all given different forms of suffering. I wouldn't say given. Again, this is where it comes down to the thing where we talked about permissive will, and just God's will in general, and allowance, and how permissive will and allowance kind of flow hand in hand. Like it's the same sort of thing. Like God allows suffering to happen in our life, because it's a way for us to continue to practice and use our free will, and it gives us the ability to still choose him, right? And so in a sense, it actually strengthens our faith way more than it would if we didn't have suffering. If we didn't have suffering, there wouldn't really be a need for free will, because we would never struggle with our faith, because it would consistently be easy. And so I think when we talk about the brush that's in our life and how it's kind of overwhelming us, and sometimes we can't see the trees that suffering is worth it in the end, because when we clear out that brush, what brush does is it'll wrap around a tree and slowly kill it. So our soul is slowly being strangled to death. And so as we clear out this brush, as we slowly work through this suffering, as we get through it, our faith is building, and these trees are starting to reject the vines, and the vines are shedding, and they're falling apart, and they're dying. And as we kill off the vines and kill off these other things, the trees begin to flourish, and they produce great fruit. And so I think that's what's really important about this quote, is to highlight how important it actually is to have that brush in your life, right? While the brush sucks and it's a terrible thing, it is important to have that brush in your life because it challenges you to be better and it challenges you to do better. So when we think about suffering and we're given suffering in our life, like, don't always view it as a negative thing, right? Use it as a way to motivate you to be better. Use it as a way to motivate you to get rid of that suffering, because consistently you're going to be given something else. And so that's just the direction I wanted to take with that.
So, as a 2-minute hiatus, speaking on suffering, Cole, how are we feeling today, pal?
How are we feeling today?
No Arsenal Barcelona Champions League final. I noticed that look of pain in your eyes when I asked that question. You hit the
Evan, this is an early time to be asking this, because Cole could very well ask you this same question later today.
Look. I very much know, and I will be watching and live tweeting to you people. But yeah, I'm just hoping and praying.
So I purposely was silent on the Lost Sheep podcast group chat yesterday.
I know. Nazario, wasn't that very suspect?
Doesn't happen
I
a lot.
was very,
No.
very quiet. I will say that was probably one of the greatest games I've seen on
Oh,
television
no doubt.
before.
No
I went
doubt.
back
Yeah.
because I had an interview during like the second half, and it was terrible because that was when everything was happening. So I went back and watched all the highlights. And I think Summer probably played the best game of his life.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
That is the Inter
the-
Milan keeper, if anyone does not know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like Lamine Yamal played outstanding and had some absolutely insane shots that should have gone in. He had two that Johan Summer just
hit the
completely
post. Well,
got barely.
He also hit the post.
Yes,
once
he
or twice
did.
as well.
It was
hey,
a
man,
crazy game.
the post isn't part of the goal, so aim
Yeah.
better. Anyway, but
crazy game.
Okay, to get back, Evan, I
Yeah,
don't know if you
yeah.
thought about this when Cole was talking about, but for our last Bible study of the year, we went to your good buddy Alex's house, and he kind of gave us his final message before he heads out to physical therapy school, PT school. And one of his biggest parts of his message was to fast often. And if you don't know what fasting is, you're basically making yourself suffer. And you're making yourself suffer so that you can grow in perseverance and grow in your will, basically. Your will to push through, your will to choose the Lord, and to just choose what is needed, not what you feel like you want at the time, with whether it be your hunger, whether it be that you're forcing yourself not to watch sports, because I know, Evan, you did that one day, that's a difficult thing. And so just forcing yourself to suffer for the greater good, to but to grow your will. And I think that's very important, as you said, Cole, with suffering. And then one last analogy I want to make is that with the brush, we can have these two types of brush to help us give this a good delineation. Say there's brush that doesn't have thorns on it, because sometimes there's brush that you stick your hand in and you feel the thorns, like crap, that got me. But then there's brush that's, it's kind of just annoying and there, and it's just taking up space, but it doesn't have thorns. So I like this analogy of thinking about the brush that doesn't have thorns. These are these things we talked about, like biting your nails or spending too much time on something else that you shouldn't be spending as much time on, something that's not a sin. There's not thorns. And then we have the brush that's
Reels.
thorns. Yeah, Instagram Reels say for too long. But then you have brush that is thorns that will really hurt you, and that can, cause blood, cause real pain, and allow fruit to really not come to fruition. So we have this analogy of the brush with thorns that is sin, and then the brush without thorns, which is just things that we can improve on but aren't sinful. What do you guys think of that?
So I like that analogy a lot.
Cool.
I like it. I think it works out well. You love. It's gonna be so funny, by the way, to clip you this episode, because people are gonna be watching the reel and just hear a bird screeching
Oh,
in the
Hear a
background,
bird.
and it's gonna be
Yeah, the
the
bird.
most random thing in the world. But yeah, I love.
At least it's not dogs barking.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. This
the
is the
I think
second time
also,
you've actually brought up fasting, by the way.
yeah,
So
I was gonna say,
you're really adamant
Me?
about this
but you should
fasting
be
point.
fasting. You should be
Yeah.
fasting.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, so if you guys don't know, I like to sports bet a lot. I'm very into sports, so I like to sports bet. It makes the games more interesting. And yesterday, Barcelona, gosh, dude, come on. They fell down 2-0 and they were like a plus 400. Great solid $1 bet right there. And then they fell behind again and they were like a plus bet. They lost, so obviously didn't make any money. But the day before that, I was like, okay, I'm not allowing myself to sports bet today. And some people might say like, oh, this is good, this is bad, like either way. But it's for me as someone who enjoys doing it, and especially when playoffs are on. Like playoffs are a really interesting time to do it. To not do it is difficult, and to say no, but it is good. I can tell once like through the day, and I'm like, wow, like I was able to have control over that. I wasn't just falling into this just because I had this like itch to place a bet. You know what I mean? You're able to grow that self-control of like, hey, I said no at the beginning of the day. I'm going to push through this, and that's why I think fasting is so good.
Yeah. Also, like you talked about a little bit, the forming your will, creating your will. And I think it's fair to say that you can kind of create your will, right? I think it's easy to fall in this trap of like, oh, like will, we all have self will in some form or another. And in reality, like, the beginning bit of that is creating your will. And I don't mean will like free will, because we already have that. I mean will like, can I say no to this? Am I free to say yes to this? And I think that that's one of the most important things that we do it, especially at our age, right? Because I think before this, a lot of people feel like we said yes and no to what our parents told us to say yes and no to. And so when you leave and you go to college and you do these things, you're making decisions for yourself, you're creating your will for yourself. And that's when it's pivotal to pulling back into that good counsel, have those friends of virtue that really can mentor you and help you and support you to create that will. And fasting is such a big part of that, right? Willful denial is such a big part of creating your will, because not only does that make you free to say no to the bad things, but also it makes you so much more freer and fuller when you say yes to the good things. Because again, right, if you're 100, then nothing means anything. We talked about this kind of with neutrality. Like, if I'm always saying yes to everything, good or bad, like, I can't tell what's good and bad after a while. It's just a decision. Like, it's just, hey, I have this thing that makes me feel good. I have this thing that makes me feel good. And, the mental battle kind of doesn't matter anymore after a point, because you're just so used to saying yes to everything. Um, and so when you take that willful denial, whether it's, sweets, whether it's biting your nails, whether it's twisting your hair, whatever it is, right? When you take that willful denial, then when you, do the good stuff, you're like, man, this is so much better and cooler and more awesome than when it was when I was, taking advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Cole, got any last things on that? Are you ready to move on?
I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So,
PPP.
Cole.
Well, here, yeah, let me. We're back on the visuals. So I don't know if you remember, but Nazario used to make the transition music for us. But should we continue that tradition?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just waiting on
Okay.
you. I'm just waiting
All
on
right.
you to do it.
Which one are we moving on first here?
Evan said PPP, so
All
Yeah,
right.
let's do PPP.
All right. And here we go.
the practical practices of the week. Oh,
This
man.
is our
Okay,
summer, Evan.
Funny enough, so I've seen a video with that, but I've never been live, and it's so much more funny live because it's just so goofy.
No, it's
Um,
awesome. I love it.
Yeah, so
Um,
Cole, throw us off a cliff with our practical prayer practice. Why don't you?
Do you still not know what it is?
No, I missed that section. I heard the Shepherd of the Week because whatever. Right, I heard that one,
It
but I did
bounced
not
right
heard.
off of it.
Yeah,
Evan,
it really
so
does.
we
Well,
bounced.
I will also say I've been thinking about this the whole episode, and this goes with being online for the summer. But I feel like I should be looking like for Nazario, like looking, up into the panel,
Oh yeah.
because we're arranged like this. I think it'd be funny if just every time we tossed it to someone, we're like, "What do you think, Nazario?" Um,
Evan,
yeah.
what are you doing?
Have you
Yeah.
seen
Oh, wait,
the
sorry.
do you remember the Brady Bunch clips where they did all of them on the screen and they all were on the screen and they would talk to each other or whatever? No, maybe not.
Mm-mm.
Well, they
No.
did
Good
it
reference, Cole. If only
did
we
it
knew
with-
what you're talking about.
with Usher and a bunch of celebrities, and Usher thought he was in the middle, and so he's sitting there and they're all singing. And he's going, and he's pointing at everybody, and he's in the bottom left corner. They did him so dirty. It's so crazy. But yeah, I'll have to pull that video up for you guys sometime. It's really funny. Yeah, practical prayer practice for
I have an image of what you're talking about if you want to look at it
yeah, pull
on the
see,
presentation.
I want to just
Yeah,
prove-
Usher. Can you see Usher?
Unfortunately, I only have the Brady Bunch
Oh,
thing.
oh,
I didn't
oh.
find
So,
the other
yeah,
thing, but this is
Usher was dead center of that, or was
That's
bottom
smart.
left, and so he
That's
was
smart.
literally just in the middle of nowhere. But there was a song they were
Mhm.
doing. They were singing "We Are the Champions," I think. But
yeah, it was one of the COVID things. Yeah.
it was a
this
COVID
being
thing.
able to access the computer like this is kind of cool. I like it.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. We have unlimited resources. But back to the practical prayer practice of the week. For this week, I don't know if you guys know. I'm sure obviously you two do. But for those of you who aren't Catholic, we recently had the tragic passing away of Pope Francis. And so we are currently undergoing a new papal election called the conclave. And all the cardinals are currently getting together and will vote today for the first time for who will be our new pope. And
Today,
we will-
meaning the day we were recording,
yes,
May 7th,
which is-
Wednesday.
yeah.
So
Yeah. So,
May
which is
7th.
super cool, by the way, because probably when this comes out, based on predictions and based on like the average, by the time this comes out, we'll have a new pope.
Yep.
So we'll definitely have to drop an Instagram reel about that. But
Yeah, it's gonna
Anyway.
be crazy.
yeah,
So just pay attention to the live stream of that. Look for the black or white smoke. The white smoke signals that we do have a new pope officially elected. Normally it takes about a day or two. Kind of just depends on how much of agreement the cardinals are in. But we are going to. The reason I bring this up is we asked for our practical prayer practice for this week that you pray for the cardinals and the conclave and for their decisions. They are being tasked literally with electing the next pope of the Catholic Church, the head of the Catholic Church, and so it's a very serious role. It's a very serious task, and so we ask and pray that they truly are guided by the Holy Spirit with the next pope that they elect, which I'm sure they will be. And so really excited about that. Anything y'all have to say on top of that for the practical prayer practice?
let's just combo wombo this. Let's talk about the conclave and everything after we do Shepherd of the Week. So, do we want to do our Nazario? Do you want to make some more music for us as we
Here it is.
transition?
Yeah, Shepherd of the Week, and boom.
oh wait. Bum, ba, bum, ba, bum, the Shepherd of the Week. I mistimed it. Little too long.
Yeah, that was shorter. But
Yeah, so-
Evan,
All right,
you wanna do
our
this?
Shepherd.
Yeah.
You got it.
No, go for it. Go for it,
Okay.
Nazario.
Our Shepherd of
I think
the
it's
Week.
pretty.
As Evan said earlier when we were figuring this out, for the second straight week, we are doing someone that has passed away. Our Shepherd of the Week for this week is the one and only Pope Francis. He died the day after Easter, which would have been April 21st. So over 2 weeks ago now. So, yeah, he is our Shepherd of the Week, talking about, just a few minutes ago about the new Pope coming in eventually, and then following Pope Francis, the one and only. So Pope Francis, I would say that he had a decent amount of controversy during his time, but for me, my favorite part about Pope Francis, things that he did while he was in office, had to be the Eucharistic revival. And he was very keen on having a youth Eucharistic revival. I know when I was in high school, I went to a retreat called the Summit Retreat, which was obviously the summit. We say the summit and source of the Catholic faith. is the Eucharist. So this whole retreat was about that. It was incredibly awesome, and that was fueled by Pope Francis, really giving us this command, this call to have a Eucharistic revival, a call back to the Eucharist. And it's actually one of the craziest things that we talk about non-Catholics not believing in the Eucharist, but then there's also a good amount of Catholics. I don't know the percentage exactly, but way too high of a number of Catholics that believe that the Eucharist is just symbolic. And so we need a revival in the Catholic Church of all of us returning to believe and to truly trust that the Eucharist is the true body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And Pope Francis was, out on the forefront, out on the battleground, trying to do that in the church, and that was one of my favorite parts about Pope Francis.
Yeah, I think it was like a few years ago, something was like 60% of Catholics don't believe that the Eucharist is the true presence, which is insane. Um, yeah, Pope Francis, obviously a really cool guy. He's the first pope that I kind of remember. Like, I remember being in like sixth grade or something and watching his election occur. Sixth or fifth grade or something like that, middle school, elementary, high elementary. And so he's the first pope that I remember like being elected and dying. And it'll be cool because, we'll get to experience that again. And also, we think about this a little bit, but like in our lives, we got the tail end of Benedict, or the tail end of JP2, or the tail end of Benedict.
No, you're right.
And,
I think JP2 was
yeah,
2005, so Cole might
yeah,
not have.
the tail end of JP2, and then we got Benedict, and then we got Pope Francis. And so in our life already, I mean, by next week, we'll have had 4 popes. And I think there was like 4 popes in 1900 as a total, maybe 5. And so like in our lifetimes, we've had more popes than most people have ever seen in 100 years. And so that's a pretty cool experience. I have to say, so my favorite Pope Francis story is, I was unfamiliar with this, but when a pope dies, they have to seal his room in the papal apartment, right? But Pope Francis never lived in the papal apartment. So he chose, instead of living in the luxurious apartment that they have for the Pope, he chose to live like in a modest apartment, tiny, in kind of the back of the Vatican. And so when they like were going to seal the apartment, in my mind I was thinking like, there's nothing in there. Like it's just rooms. Like he never moved in, he never lived there, like he never did anything in there. So it's just a cool, very people always say that like he was a very modest, very down to earth guy. He wasn't, highfalutin, I'm the Pope being everybody. Just a very real human. And I think you can see that. I think, you look back on Benedict and JP2 also, right? And you say like, hey, they were very real humans. Like they were not popes that were high and mighty or trying to be very, very, sacramental and huge and up here. But they were people who like their favorite things were going out and seeing like the guys gathered in St. Peter and gals gathered in St. Peter's Basilica. Like we talk about Pope Francis, the last thing he did before he died, reportedly, was say mass for Easter. Like he got up, probably not knew, but probably knew that his strength was failing, that, his time was coming to a close, maybe not that day, but, in the next few weeks. And he got up and said mass for the people who had traveled to the Vatican for Easter. And that's just, it's kind of a testament to the servant heart that he had, in that kind of that love towards his people, that love towards the church, and that's all we can ask, really. I think, were y'all there on Sunday? Were y'all at St. Francis on Sunday? No, no. Uh-oh. What do you mean, It was like 2 days ago.
No.
Okay. So Father Mugaga gave the 8:45 homily, and he was like, arm waving and doing his thing, and he said this at one point. He was like, "Look, the church is guided by God. Like it or not, if you don't believe in the Pope, you don't believe in God. Because at the end of the day, we believe that we go through this whole process. We go through the conclave. We go through this election. We go through this prayerfully because we believe that the person that the Cardinals pick is the person that God intended. And so, he was very to the point of like, we don't need a specific person. We just need a person in order to have a pope, and we have to trust. Hey, Nazario's dad, we have to trust that God is leading His church, and God is going to give us the right person that we need. So, but Papa Francisco, sick guy, sick guy.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Cole.
I really think y'all pretty much summed it up. The reason I hesitated on that when he asked me about Sunday is because I was looking up this video when Pope Francis was asked in 60 Minutes about the blessing of same-sex couples. And I just watched the 60-minute clip or 60-second clip on it. It was pretty funny because they asked him. They basically were like, "So you allowed the blessing of same-sex couples and yada yada yada?" And Pope Francis was like, "No, that's not what I allowed." He was like, "No, I actually just allowed the blessing of just individuals." And he's like, "Which is what we've done forever. It's just the blessing of everyone. Like everyone can be blessed." And he said, "But dogmatically, the Catholic Church does not allow the blessing of same-sex couples." But I remember that video went viral because she asked him about it, and he literally was just like, "No, it's not. That's not what it does." So
I think Pope Francis did a really good job, and this is where people misunderstand him, especially non-Catholics, and especially Catholics, honestly, because there's a lot of Catholics that don't like Pope Francis, which again, is it's an interesting take. Um, say what you will, but like he did a really good job of living his life as like hate the sin, love the sinner, and I think that's what a lot of his more controversial stuff comes down to is we're all humans, like we have to love each other, but at the same time, like we're in this fight against all these things that are abominations or destructions of our what we see as destructions of our morality. And so, he lived his life like that very well. And I think people just don't understand that as well as we should.
yeah, I completely agree. That's very often, I think, what happened during his papacy. Really quickly, do y'all want to move on to the last little portion? Nazario, I know you have a important meeting you have to get to. I'll so we'll keep it short. Any final thoughts here,
Well,
gentlemen?
yeah, as just Evan said, by the time this video releases, the conclave will probably be over. So
Sick.
if it's
Sick.
already over, you don't have to pray for the conclave if it's already over, but pray for the Pope. Pray for if his health goes bad, like Pope Francis did, make sure to pray for them and their health, but also most importantly, pray for their intentions and that they lead the church in the right way and that they allow the Holy Spirit to guide them. And as Evan talked about, Pope Francis did a good job of not letting it be about him. And we just pray that the next Pope does that as well. And that is, I can't even imagine how hard that would be because you have so much power and authority, and the devil is definitely going to try to attack the Pope, whoever it is, as much as possible in that moment because why would he not? I mean, he's the head of the church. He's who everyone looks to on earth as a human being. And so the devil is going to try to attack that person. He needs our prayers just as much as anyone else in the world needs prayer. So please pray for the Pope. And if it's the election is still going, pray for the conclave as well. And I would say my final thoughts for this quote that we're on, which is you got to burn through the brush to get through the trees. So I completely kind of forgot what it means exactly. What was it exactly?
Gotta burn through the brush to get to the trees.
Yes, that right there. And so my final thoughts on it are Jesus has a few parables talking about seeds and planting seeds. And of course, the big parable about all the different soil that the seeds fall onto and what happens with that. And so that is just kind of the final imagery that I want to give, that we're called with other people to plant seeds. And as much as we can nurture those seeds is amazing. But we can't exactly control what soil that falls onto. But we can control our own soil, what soil that other people's seeds that they're trying to plant within us, and what kind of seeds we're trying to plant within ourselves. We can control that soil. And so I just hope that you guys are able to learn how to cultivate good soil so that good trees can come up. And when that happens, to clear out the weeds, to clear out the brush, so that your seeds can grow and be fruitful, and so that we can all just allow God to nurture our seeds to create incredible fruits that point everyone towards Him.
I think that's good for me right there. What about you? Haven't got anything to say on top of that? All right,
I'm out,
awesome. Nazario, you want to close this out? And don't forget, plug.
Actually, Cole, you would be very excited. I actually brought my wristbands. Hold on.
Oh my gosh, he did.
Let me get my. I brought my
Need to order my
wristbands back.
shirt.
Okay. I brought multiple back. My family is wearing them, and my brothers are going to take it to their high school and give it to some of their friends. So we're giving away the wristbands, actually. So get excited. And if anyone else wants a wristband, especially if you're in Kentucky, I've got wristbands now to give to you. So that's very exciting. But don't forget about the shirts as well, which
have both of you ordered?
Yeah.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, to share, to follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts. It could be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. I'm not sure about iHeartRadio. I don't know if they have a podcast version. But anywhere you find podcast, we are more than likely there. If not, let me know, and I'll try to get us there. And we just thank you all for listening. We will be in this format for the rest of the summer. So let us know if anything went awry this episode that we can improve on, especially with the audio, maybe even the visuals. We will try to work on improving that so that we can give you guys the best quality content. Feel free to leave a comment in any way, any questions, critiques, anything like that. We would love to hear from you guys. You can DM us anything that you would like. But thank you all for listening to watching episode 51. We'll be back with episode number 52 next week. Thank you all for listening. We are the Lost Sheep Podcast. God bless.